Hey guys, Chris here, the RC Geek. Welcome back. Now, some of you guys know, especially if you follow on Facebook or Instagram, but about a year ago, crashed my competition scale Mirage 3RS. I spent a good portion of the early part of this past year getting the airplane all repaired and, was thankfully still able to qualify and compete with the airplane at the US Scale Masters Championships. It was a tough road getting there, truthfully. I seemed to be having regular issues with the airplane, but made it there, competed, and much to my surprise, I actually came out of the Scale Masters Championships winning first place in Expert and was named the 2016 Grand National Champion. Even now, I still can't even believe it. Hey, sup? It was such a great event with a wonderful and talented group of scale modelers. I really can't wait to go back. It's such a great community and so much fun. And hopefully, when we do go back, it'll be with our big Skyray project that I haven't worked on in a while. But about the crash repairs, I wrote an article on how I did the fiberglass repairs a little bit ago, which you can read here at thercgeek.com. In this video, we're talking detail parts, specifically how to make pitot tubes, how to make antennas, because I had to rebuild a few of these detail parts in the repair process. So I thought I'd show you guys what I did. These are details, really easy to make, and always add that extra dimension to a model for added realism. So, pitot tubes, antennas. Let's go! When we talk about detail parts, we need to talk about which materials to use. We're dealing with parts that are protruding from a model, so we need parts with stiffness and resilience to repeated abuse. Let's face it, these are parts sticking off of the airplane. They're going to get knocked and bumped repeatedly. Now for pitot tubes, my go-to is to use concentric brass tubes. I use silver solder to solder everything together, and I guarantee you'll break them out of the airplane before these pitot tubes break. For antennas, I turn to basswood since it's easy enough to sand, but hard enough to withstand most bumps. Now, what about 3D printing, you ask? For antennas, 3D printing is definitely a good option, especially if there's sufficient thickness in the part for printing with a hard material like PLA or something like that. I didn't go that route in this case simply because it was quicker to carve out the one antenna that I needed to remake it from basswood. Now, for pitot tubes, 3D printing could really go either way. We're talking about really fine, small detail parts, and so to get that, you need an SLA print. Unfortunately, SLA can be brittle, especially when we're talking about really small parts. Either way, brass is really hard to beat in terms of its resilience to constant abuse. To make these antennas, I've got my patterns here, and I've got my reference material here. Now this is just something I found on the internet. One of the things I really like to do is the research, so I research a lot of my scale projects. Using the patterns, I'm going to cut out this base and the antenna itself out of some 1/16 inch basswood, and simply all we're going to do is cut out the patterns, sand them to shape, and then use primer to seal in the wood, and then they'll be ready to install. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out our patterns here. I'm going to spray glue them onto the wood, and from there I can use a straight edge and an X-Acto, and we will cut these out, and then they'll be ready to sand. So one thing to note on our blade antenna, the direction of the grain of the wood is important. We want the grain of the wood to run longitudinally, so that way it's going to have strength. Because all these protrusions coming off your fuselage or wings or whatever, they get bumped, so they have to have some structural rigidity to them. 3M77 spray glue. So we've got this cut out. Simply gonna block sand all the edges and the corners to round them out, whatever our pattern is. Now at this point we have the base and we have the antenna. And so now we're just going to simply sand it all to shape, and then we'll seal it up with a primer. Now, to prepare the basswood for paint, simply taking a prime sand prime approach works for filling in the wood grain. To glue it in place, I cut a slot in the fuselage and then simply epoxy the antenna into the slot. There should be about 1/8 inch material or so that extends into the fuselage so you don't have any issues with it shearing off in any way. Trust me, you don't want to have any issues with antenna dysfunction. It's a serious problem. So here is the repaired antenna and base installed and finished on the airplane. On this particular airplane, on the full size, the antenna was black, so nothing really special in terms of finish or paint or anything like that. Now to make this pitot tube, we've got our resource material. I've got a picture here, you can see it here. And then I've also got a drawing. I'm going to use this drawing to size the pitot tube, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to use concentric brass tubing to make the tube. It's all going to get cut to shape, and then I'm going to grind each end to get kind of the beveled look, and then that's going to be it. And then we're going to solder that pitot assembly onto this brass blade here. Let's go through and make the pitot tube. We got to cut this tubing into these into 3 separate lengths, and then we'll glue that together just with some CA, and then we will use some silver solder to solder this all together. Now to cut the tube, I've marked it based on my drawing. I'm going to just use a sharp X-Acto knife like this to cut through. We'll square it off with a sanding block. We're going to take these first 2 tubes, we're going to glue these in. You can see that I've got an overhang on both sides, and that's so that I can grind a bevel on the disc sander, so to get that, how it necks down into the small actual pitot tube itself. And so now we have this ready to go. We're going to go over to the belt sander and sand this. I'm going to put this in a drill so that way when we sand it, we can get a nice concentric bevel on here. Now at this point we are going to solder these two together. And any detail or any filling we have to do, we can do with the icing. What we're looking for is something like that. And to solder this, we're going to use silver solder. So we got this set, and we're just going to use the silver solder. It's got a flux, so you get the flux between the joining surfaces, and that's going to allow the solder to flow in between that intersection. Now we've got a bit of excess here, so we'll just file that down with a file and get the intersection that we want. But this thing is on here, it's not going anywhere, so that's good. That's what we want. Now to finish this off, we've got the 1/16 inch diameter, the smallest diameter tube in here to complete it, and we're just gonna get some CA in there. It's gonna hold it real tight, and then that is our pitot tube. Now from here, we've got this radius in here. We're going to use some icing to fill that in, and then on the back we still got a little bit of a hole here because of the tubing, so we're going to fill that in with the icing as well. And then we'll primer it up a little bit, and then it'll be ready to put on the airplane. With the pitot tube made, it's prepped for paint with a little primer, and then again just epoxied into the airplane. Just like the antennas, you know, grind a slot into the fuselage to receive the pitot base, and then epoxied in place. Now here's the repaired pitot tube installed and finished. All of the pitot tubes on the airplane were made this way. There's 3 of them total. And to get the metallic finish on the front, I just used some Alclad 2 plastic model paint. If you've never used it, it's awesome paint that really gives you a convincing metallic finish in most cases. And the other thing is it's really durable, which is nice. So there it is, guys. You know, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful and you're inspired to give this a try. You know, these small details always add so much realism to a model, and they're really not that difficult to make. Try it out and see what you think. And let me know in the comments, you know, what methods do you guys like to use on this stuff. I'd love to hear it, as there's always more than one way to approach this stuff. Now next time, I'm hoping we'll have our next update on the Mirage 2000 Kfir Kit Bash. I've got that project active and on the bench, and so be sure to subscribe to get that when it's posted. Also, I have a full article on my blog, thercgeek.com, with links to everything, so be sure to check that out. If you'd like to see my repaired Mirage in action again, you can see that here, or if you'd like to see some of my other tips, you can see those down here. Hey, this is your 2016 Scale Masters National Champion signing off, and I'll see you guys at the field.